You need to bleep that. So we were doing a lot of track days, and every weekend spending hundreds of pounds, hotels, towing loads of trailers, all the different cars. I thought, wouldn't it be nice if you could just have something which did it all? So I had a little look around. There's a few choices of trucks, but we went for the LF because we already knew about a company called Kevin Parker Horse Boxes who were doing the top, the overcab bed, and they were using LFs. So we thought we'll get the gear off them and fit that to that. So we were choosing one of them. Found anyway this LF, which is former Benson's for beds, which means it's got the 24-foot box on it. As a 7.5 ton truck, that's about the biggest box you're going to get, 24 foot. So okay, find one of them. Drove to Bristol, went and got it, drove it home, sound. Now, as you can see from some of the photos, the first challenge was basically saying, well, we've got the truck cab and we've got the box, and what's the best way of making it more so it's a habitable thing? We knew that we wanted two things. We wanted to be able to get from the cab to the back. That was definitely, we were going to have to do it. And we wanted to be able to tip the cab. I had a little trip up to Kevin Park and I had a look how he was doing it. Came home and attempted to replicate it. The first thing we thought was, there's no point cutting a big hole in the front of the box when there's already a big hole in the back of it. So we thought, we've got the facility here in the farm we were on at the time to lift the box off and turn the truck round back in. So that's, you can see us doing that. You see me getting a bit panicked because it was a little bit precarious, but it's fine. It all worked out okay. And spun the box round, took the doors off first, obviously off the back, and then that gave us an 8-foot gap in the box and then the back of the cab. And you can see Steve had welded, or got the idea of starting welding a frame on, and we cut it all out. And that there was the first, once you did that, you know, okay, well, that's the cab, that's how it's going to sit. And we didn't really know too much about the rest of the inside by then. We knew we were going to have a door on the back, and we knew we were going to have beds on the back with a wardrobe. But that position of the habitation door, which we'd fitted first, was basically, not to say a guess, because we plan everything quite well, but we put it, as it turned out, it's actually in a lovely place, but we put it roughly where we thought we're going to have enough depth for a wardrobe and a bed. And then we can get in the back, and then it doesn't matter what we do at the front. We can fit the pod, we can fit the ears, we can do all the welding, we can do all that. And that will become a sealed thing, and that's what happens. And the cab will still tilt. We're going to do a video at some point of the cab tilting, and you can see that happening. But it tilts exactly as if it was a standard truck, because the pod bolted onto the top of the cab, that moves away. When it's back in position there, in addition to the locks which are under the cab, which would be on the standard vehicle, there's also some captive nuts on that frame, so you can send some bolts through and bolt that down, so the cab is then bolted to the back, and then that's all safe. There's a seal in there as well, so those two become one. We already had an idea, obviously having used to hire motorhomes and having had caravans in the past. We had a rough idea of what we didn't want. One of the major things with the campervans, particularly and you'll see a few references to this in the design, we knew it was going to be a vehicle for quite a number of people, either those people who were staying in it or those people who were just, you're at a track day, you're at a car show, whatever, there's going to be people milling about. So you'll see a lot of the design features are based on that. So a few of the questions we've already had off the previous video was like, why have you put a big window on the side of it? And that's all to do with the fact that it's basically a premises at the events, as well as being somewhere to sleep, as well as it's a better vehicle. It can tow your trailers, it can save you money on hotels, but it's also going to be somewhere you can stand during the day. Because what I don't like doing going to car shows is standing there in the rain and everyone's sitting in the car, and it's just not good. So if you go to a show, you go to a track day, you need to be prepared enough. So if you can all pile in the truck and stay warm, here we go, that's a good idea. So that was the rationale behind the door on the side. In terms of the accommodation side of it, I knew that we had to have instant hot water, in terms of you turn the tap on and then it heats it up, and that's it. In the campervans and the caravans, you warm up the water in advance and it takes half an hour to heat it up, and then you get 2 showers and it's cold again and you got to wait another half an hour. Now, if there's 5 people sleeping in it, that's not acceptable, because not to say you've got a job to do at the car show, but you kind of have. You've got to get up in the morning. You've got to go and do your sound test. You've got to go and do your various things. You don't want to be faffing about waiting for the water to warm up, because you're not there to sit about waiting for water. You're there to actually enjoy the weekend, the thing you've gone and done. So that was the thing. We definitely need instant hot water. We need a good pump. We need a lot of water. In terms of our ability to survive off grid, these aren't campsites, so you can't always guarantee you've got a hookup. You can't always guarantee you've got a water supply. You can't always guarantee you've got somewhere to empty the waste. So all of that was factored in the fact that if it's not a campsite, and it probably won't be, and it probably won't have the facilities, we still need to be in a field somewhere, but able to survive without relying on other services that were there. So for that reason, we specified 4 leisure batteries, 110 amp hour each, 440 amp hour of 12 volt DC, which is probably a bit overkill, but there's not that much difference. In fact, there's no electrical difference in wiring 4 batteries in as wiring 1 battery, and physically we've got the room to do it, so we may as well have a couple of 100 amp hours of electricity DC. Now, the thing with this specification is it was done nearly 10 years ago. Now, at the time, we also had said we want external lights that we're going to put on the roof, and there were certain other things that we needed to do that needed to be 240, namely big halogen lights on poles that clip to the side of it. Now, technology has moved on in those 10 years in our favour, such that it's probably likely that we won't be relying much on 240, if at all. There's certain parts, the boiler needs it to trigger, the oven needs it because it needs an ignition, so there's inverters in there to do those jobs. But in terms of a high current 240 volt draw, we don't really have one. We also have a big flat roof, which at some point I'd like to put some solar panels up there, and don't know the maths yet and yet to work it out, but my feeling would be you could probably survive off grid with solar panels and 4 leisure batteries, and not worry about 240, because you're having appliances that need it, and also you've got enough DC and you can recharge, so even what you do use you can put back. So that's the eventual hope, is to move away from mains power, really, because I don't think there's much reason to keep it. We've got kitchen units in there which are basically domestic spec, because it's big enough. One of the things we did do in terms of specifying the truck is we went and had a look at some motorhomes, and the most noteworthy thing for me was, if you've got a 3.5 ton motorhome, which sounds a lot, but if you start with a van and you have got to stay on a Cat B driving license, 3.5 ton, some of the stuff in there is quite flimsy. And we also didn't think that if we were going to have essentially a room to go in there, you've got to have people coming and going. It can't all fall apart when you put more than 5 people in there. This won't be a carefully looked after motorhome by a family and people who are careful. It'll be a public space effectively, so it's got to be kind of tough. And I didn't really want anything campervan, aside from it being woefully expensive for what it is, but the campervan stuff to me looked a bit flimsy, so we specified domestic stuff, 600mm standard units, which allowed us to get a 600mm oven and hob. Now it's LPG converted using different jets, so we can use the mobile gas system, but essentially it's a home oven. And then a fridge, which again starts life as a home fridge. When we're on the move, we can use the vehicle batteries for that at 24 volts. And when we're stopped, we can draw off the leisure 12 volt side. But it's a domestic size. One thing you will notice about campervan fridges and caravan fridges is they're not very big. Again, you can't cater a lot of people. So we'd said, okay, the fridge has got to be quite big. So the kitchen ended up being 2400 long, cupboard, oven, cupboard, fridge. And then we put a sink on the top of it. Now, again, based on the YouTube comments from the previous video, we're probably going to revisit that, because as has been mentioned to us, you don't really want the hob next to the sink. The reason for that was we didn't really want the oven next to the fridge, but we'll think of something. I'm sure that can be reconfigured. A few people didn't like the circular sink either. What I would say is we went to IKEA and it was cheap, so we got it. You'll see a lot of that. It's not a big money build, so a lot of the things is done because that was the cheapest way of doing it. It's also built out of 18mm ply, which is a little bit heavy. I know we had said not too flimsy, but you can go the other way with it, make it a bit heavy. And there's a wall covered as well, so that probably revisit it in something a bit lighter and see where we go with that, reconfigure the stuff. Now the shower and the toilet, again, we could have saved a bit of space there, and we could have looked at the way it was done in a motorhome, and we could have said, well, what we'll do is we'll have one room and you'll have a shower where you'll also go to the toilet, which is nice because it's a great use of space. But the problem is if it rains and people nip in to go to the toilet, or even someone's had a shower and someone nips in there, what we didn't want to do is have potentially a wet floor in that room and that getting walked all over the thing. So we tried to separate the shower from the toilet, so they should be separately. And even if someone's in there, you can still go to the toilet and you're not going to get wet feet. You're not going to be walking it all around the carpet. Now that's a slight waste of space, really, because we haven't combined the two, but we can kind of afford it. So that was one of the compromises we thought. We've got the space, we may as well use it in that way. Obviously, minimise the size of the toilet, so it's a little bit small in there, but it's enough to be, you know, you're not in there long, hopefully. The shower's its own separate room. So we've got, again, domestic level, 700 square tray. I'll show you the cladding where it lands on the tray, because I did see your comments about how to do that. Let's see if it checks out with how you recommended to us. It's a nice job, actually. I'm proud of that bit. But it's domestic, shower bar, and all the fittings are straight out of Screwfix off the shower catalogue. It's actually cheaper to do that, even though you think, well, it's actually bigger stuff and tougher stuff, but it's cheaper than motorhome stuff, and it'll hopefully last us a bit longer. And if it does break, hopefully it's a bit easier to replace. Originally specified 2 300-litre tanks, one for the clean, one for the waste, which are sited under the side, and we'll show you them. My view at the moment is we need to move them, because the massive 300 litres is loads, but it would be nice to have it all. It's massive, but it gets a bit heavy, but crucially, it's in the wrong place. So when you fill them, because that's only on steel suspension, it's not air suspension, because I wasn't flash enough at the time to buy one with air suspension, but it's on steel suspension, so you've no control really until you put the jacks down on how the vehicle sits. So you couldn't fill it and drive it because it sits on the wonk. So I think we're going to move the tanks, maybe go down a little bit in water capacity, but still enough. You can get tanks that go down the middle of the chassis that accommodate around the prop. So we'll see how much space we can get out of that, but hopefully enough that we can fill it up, we can drive around, and we're not relying on going and finding a tap before we can have a wash in the morning. It's too much to cover in one video. So if there's anything you want to see that we've not yet talked about, then give us a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe and click the bell and all that type of thing.